This will be a tutorial on how I made the particle effects for Mystic Myers. In particular, this example will be on the player death particle effect. And what I was ultimately going for was this bursting of feathers coming from the player when they're hit. And I'll quickly show you how that looks in game. As you can see, there's a short burst of feathers when the player dies. So the first thing that you want to do is find a sprite that you want the particles to look like. So I found this little sprite of a feather with a transparent background, and I brought that into Unity. Then you want to make a new material, and we'll call it a particle. And what you want to do is then go to albedo, add in that sprite, and change the shader to particles alpha blended. And then you get this clear image of that sprite that we got. So next you want to create an empty game object, call it particle, and add in this particle system. And this is what you'll get, which is the default Unity particle system. So to input that material, you want to go to renderer, and as it says here, material, just click there and add in that sprite. So now we have little feathers spawning and moving around, but we don't really want them to be spawning one after another. We want this sort of all spawning together in an explosion or burst. So what you want to do is go to emissions, and we want to change this rate over time to 0, and instead adding a burst to this list, and automatically it has these default settings which work quite well when you adjust the other settings. So from there, I just leave that one, and I go to this particle, and we don't want this sort of effect to last as long, so I change this to 1, and you can see that they're like emitting every 1 second. So the next thing is changing the lifetime. Like, they seem to be like, it seems a bit too long. We want it to be a short, quick burst. So I changed this one to 0.5, and as you can see, they're moving quite slowly, the individual particles. So I want to make them a little bit faster, spreading out. The next thing that I changed was the start size of the individual particles. So they all do start at the same size, but we want a little bit of variety. So what I really like to do is have a random between two constants. And what I did was put in 0.1 so that you have these tiny little particles, these little specks, and it just adds some variety. And so we're done with that one. We want to sort of change up the shape of the particle system. So for this one, it's automatically set on cone, and in a 3D project, this will actually be sort of spawning down here and sort of moving upwards, but we want it to be spawning in a circle. And you can change the radius of this one if you don't want it too big, but 1 seems pretty good to me. So we also want to add in this randomized direction. So this will spawn the individual particles and sort of send them into a random direction instead of them all sort of going, in that typical circle shape. So what I do is put 1 there and see how they're sort of moving around in the different directions now. So last but not least, we're going to add in rotation over lifetime. So what this is going to do is make the individual particles rotate over time. So if we click that, you can see that they sort of quickly start to rotate. And for here, I put in 100, and there you have the particle effect. So I wanted to show you how I use this process for the other particle systems in the game, just by changing out that sprite and a few other settings. So this is the particle system for the rock destruction, and if I pause it, you can see how they're all different sort of colors, and I did this by adding in this random between two colors here and selecting in this brown sort of color, and what it does is it chooses a color randomly between these two, so like the spectrum between these two colors. And then for the enemy death particle, I simply just changed the color to black, and it has a really awesome effect. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching.